All right, so we've covered the 4 green flags before you start your business, and hopefully that's given you the energy and the inspiration to take your first step and to start your own startup story and journey. So good luck to you. Now, today we're going to be talking about 4 red flags that you shouldn't ignore and try and address before you start your very long journey, okay? And the first one's a pretty obvious one, but I feel like I have to remind a lot of people about this because there's a lot of content and information floating around in the world, especially because we're very connected through technology. And it's trying to copy someone else's exact blueprint for success. Please don't, because there is no blueprint, right? There's nothing wrong with seeing how other people have achieved what they have done today and take it as a source of inspiration so you keep going and you keep driving. And maybe the key learning you take away from that is the way they approach certain processes within starting a business, like how to do marketing and how to do these things. But there is no blueprint to go from starting a company to an X million dollar valuation to an exit, right? And if anyone's peddling that to you, just take it with an air of caution. Because what I've learned through my own startup journey over 6 years, where we hit a 10 million valuation and we failed, and I've seen a lot of peers in the market who started around the same time as me drop off sooner, or now have companies that are worth close to $1 billion. Everyone's journey is different. Everyone learns a different way. And once they succeed, people try and reverse engineer, oh, that's the blueprint of success now. So you could be watching this, just getting started, and in 5 years' time, you could be the new poster boy or girl of a successful startup, and people will try and copy your blueprint, and you'll be sitting on the other end of it going, don't copy me, I had no idea what I was doing, or I was just trying to progress. So I think the key thing around, not a blueprint, but how to approach trying to create a successful startup is just knowing that it's going to take time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You need to be consistent. You need to be ready to have a very curious mindset. Be open to learn, and that'll serve you really well. So the first red flag is, if you think there's a blueprint, there isn't, don't follow it. The second red flag, which I almost half addressed in the green flags video of what's good, is you're starting a company for the sake of starting it, right? Your why or the reason for doing it, the problem you're trying to solve, isn't really something that you actually want to solve. You just feel like you need to escape something else to start this company, whether it's your full-time job, whether it's something else. You're doing it because maybe you've seen other people do it and you think there's a very sensationalized experience ahead of you. I can promise you right now, there isn't, right? And I'll give you an example from my own personal perspective. The startup that we actually got really excited about and did was Two Space, as you know, the one where we turned restaurants closed during the day into co-working, and that's the one where we hit the 10 million val. But my business partner and I actually had an idea before that we were about to launch. So we almost got saved from doing that by finding something we were way more into and excited about. And that idea was actually called Quokka. So we even had a name for it. We were branding it off that little animal in Australia, the little squirrel looking quokka thing. And it was about, because we had the technical capability to do it through my co-founder, it was to do with podcasts back then, before they were huge, and how to create call to actions from listening to a podcast so that if someone did some sort of advertising or call to action, it would pop up on your phone and you could click on it and do it because the conversion rate was too tough, right? We almost started that, but we actually weren't, there was no why. We were just doing it because we saw a gap in the market. We were like, that would be cool, right? And I'm very grateful we didn't, because if that company didn't take off immediately, we would have given it up probably 2 years in or 3 years in easily, right? Because we weren't really that psyched about the idea. It was more, hey, there's an opportunity to build some tech to plug this gap and make some money. So the wrong way to go about it. So the second red flag is you don't really know what your why is, and you're starting it for the sake of starting it. Now, a funny one is, a third red flag is, to a degree, you've watched way too many of these TV shows about startups and movies, and you're totally looking at it through rose-tinted glasses, right? It's romanticized so much to a degree that I think it gets a lot of people into trouble, especially funding. And there's nothing wrong with getting funding for your startup, especially if you're creating a product offering that needs upfront capital to get it off the ground. But I mean, funding gets you in a lot of trouble as an early stage founder, because suddenly you're signed up and you're obligated to these shareholders. So if you started this company to start your own thing, suddenly your new boss is your shareholders, frankly. And they're going to give you double-sided advice all the time, like, hey, scale faster, make more money, but also we want your product to be the best experience possible, but that's impossible if you're trying to scale too fast and you're trying to cut costs. And then you find you're pegged to these ridiculous targets where if you don't hit them, your company value has gone down. And then the next time you need to ask for money, which you've designed your business to do, because you're in this vicious, snake eating itself cycle where you got funding to start your company and to grow it, and you need more funding to continue growing because you're actually not making enough profit and your cash flow is really low. That's just the wrong thing to do as a first-time founder, especially as an early business. Hey, if this is your 8th business that you're starting, go for it. But a red flag is you think it's this sexy, cool experience that you're about to embark on. It really isn't. So almost get ready for a situation where, because you don't know any better, you're going to do it. But if you look at it in hindsight, even when I look at my startup journey, in hindsight, I would never do it again. Even if I could go back in time and do it better, if a genie appeared in front of me and said, hey, if I could take you back to when you first started with everything that you know today so you can knock it out of the park, would you do it? I would say no, because I know it wouldn't be an overnight success. I would still need all of those years of hard work and grit and sacrifice, and I just wouldn't do it. So that's the 3rd red flag. And I guess the 4th red flag, which is a bit of a cheeky one, but you see it all the time, and you've probably bumped into these people all the time, whether they realize it or not. They're more excited about pitching and talking about it than doing it, right? So there's a lot of people that you might see pitching the same idea for a year or 2 years, but they haven't actually started. And it might be a case where they think they need funding, so they get caught up way too much in creating this sexy deck. They're stuck in Canva trying to create the perfect pitch deck ever because they've downloaded like the last 100 decks of companies that have unicorn valuations now. They're like, ooh, what was Canva's deck or Airbnb's deck or Atlassian's deck when they were looking for money? And that's all they're doing. And they're running around pitching the idea, trying to find that first investor, that first strategic advisor, that first VC to back them, when they could have started a long time ago, or at least started the process, right? So that's definitely a red flag. And if you find yourself doing it, where you could probably start, but you're holding off because you think you need someone behind you to start in the first place, and you're scared of starting because you're like, oh, if I start now, I'm not going to grow as fast as if I start next year with someone's help. That's a red flag, right? And coming back to the funding thing, I think it comes down to funding sometimes, why people think they have to grow so much, because it's this weird formula where the only reason you care about your company valuation is, yes, because you want to sell it one day, but you shouldn't be thinking about that at the start. But it's because if you start too early and your start date is now here and you don't grow like this, you're not going to be able to have a very high company valuation because they're going to forecast what that value is in a few years' time, which means you're not going to get as much money as you'd like when you give away 5-10% of your company. But if you've suddenly started a business that is not reliant on upfront seed capital, then grow at your own leisure, right? If you developed a model where you're making margin and you don't need funding, that's great. That's incredible, and no one's going to kind of tap you on the shoulder if you ever do ask for funding for the right reasons, which is to grow fast, to strap a rocket ship to your growth and grow like that. They're not going to backdate to the day that you first started and go, oh, hang on, but your growth only happened like this over here, but you started 2 years before that. They're not going to care because you're already succeeding, right? They only apply that formula to ideas that haven't really gotten any traction yet because no one's putting the effort in. So that's another red flag. So those are the 4 red flags, and address them or not. But that's my advice to you, and I wish you all the best of luck. If you haven't watched the 4 green flags, check that out because that's more of an uplifting video. And I do see a lot of people who haven't started yet that should start because they've got the green flags sorted, in aces. So good luck, you got this, and I'll speak to you again soon. How long was that?